Now I know what your first thought is going to be. Why the fuck is this video coming out in April 2026 instead of, I don't know, 2025? Well, I have a perfectly good explanation for this, so just hear me out. Well, if you don't want it, you can just go to the timecode right here because it's a little bit of a rant. So, I streamed Red Dead Redemption 2 last year. Yes, this is relevant, I swear. And let's just say that it took up a lot of my time. I also had the unfortunate issue of having my PC dying on me. For some reason the game kept on stuttering for me, so I tried to open it up and see if I could fix it myself. But unfortunately, my PC wouldn't turn back on. Shit. So I brought it to a repair guy and I didn't get back for like a month. When I did get my PC back eventually, the repair guy said that I would have done less damage if I had thrown the thing off a moving vehicle. But I swear guys, I don't think I was that bad. It wasn't the worst time because I just booted up my PS4 and played through Bloodborne and The Last of Us and that 2016 Ratchet & Clank movie reboot game thing. Honestly, I only wanted to include this part just to mention that I finally played Bloodborne and I now understand all the hype. Sony, for the love of God, please port this to PC. Anyways, I was finally able to finish Red Dead Redemption 2 around August, but then I did a playthrough of Red Dead Redemption 1 to finish that off. But I did finally play Expedition 33, which may or may not be on this list. That game took a while to stream too due to its length. Now that's because I was experiencing PC issues again, but this time I was able to fix it myself because I'm a genius. I had most of the games that I wanted to talk about in this video finished around January, but then my CPU cooling fan decided to shit itself and I needed a new one, which meant I didn't have a PC for nearly 2 weeks. Ugh. Long story short, Red Dead Redemption 2 and my PC dying on me multiple times caused the delay. Anyways, 2025 was a pretty mid-year to be honest. Nothing particularly good came out and nothing swept any award shows, I swear, trust me. This video is actually pretty pointless, so I'll see you in the next video. Okay, in all seriousness, we had a pretty stellar year for gaming. Despite one game outshining its competitors, we will get there, we still had a wide variety of bangers. We had bangers about walking, bangers about driving, bangers about skating, bangers about committing HR violations, bangers about shooting dirty rats in the back, and many more bangers. Okay, I'm gonna stop saying the word bangers now. I'm just glad that with the rise of god-awful AI-generated garbage, we can still get fantastically unique games created with love, passion, and originality. Honestly, fuck generative AI. All my homies hate generative AI. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get on with my list. Remember, this is just my opinion. My list probably wildly differs from yours, and that's okay. Let's all be civil and respect each other's opinions. Thank you. Now let's get started with my honourable and dishonourable mentions. I honestly had no idea what to think when I saw Schedule 1 for the first time. It was advertised on the front page of Steam, and I was thinking like, if an indie game is getting this attention, I have to try it out. And honestly, I was surprised by how much of a great time I had. It's essentially just like a Breaking Bad sim. The game is all about making and selling drugs in your town, and the whole gameplay loop revolves around managing your business, making sure you have the right tools and ingredients so that you can continuously make more product without it running out on you. Then you also have to worry about distribution, like you have to hire dealers to sell all of your stuff so you can get the most money. There was honestly a lot of depth in it and it was very addicting. Also, the music had no right being as good as it was. It has been getting updates ever since it came out, but I honestly haven't played in a couple of months, so I'll have to try it out for myself and see how much they've updated. It's definitely a fun and unique game I would recommend checking out. Atomfall is essentially just British Fallout. Like in my notes, I literally just said British Fallout in it, bruv. It's made by the studio that made Sniper Elite, and honestly I have to give a lot of respect to the devs for doing something wildly different to what they're used to. Now, it doesn't entirely pay off. I do think some of the quests are a bit basic and the gameplay loop could have been a bit more developed, and also the AI is very easily exploitable. This definitely feels like a AA game, but honestly I think they did a great job for what they had. I hope that Rebellion makes more unique experiences like this in the future. It's nice that they can also make other games that aren't just Sniper Elite. Egging On is a game that can fuck off. It's one of those like getting over it type games, and it's my dishonorable mention because even though it's actually a decent game, it pissed me off so much, I hate it. Nah, but for real though, it's a pretty unique and fun kind of rage game. I never actually finished it. I gave it like 2 or 3 hours, got high up, and then I was like, you know what? Maybe in the future I'll play it again, but not right now. I need to actually save my sanity. If you love these types of rage type games, give it a go, but my god, your patience is going to be tested sometimes. Okay, now it's time for the objective, definitive, top 10 games of 2025. Hey, do you like walking? Do you like lighthouses? boy, do I have the game for you. Keeper comes from Double Fine, the creators of Psychonauts, and while I still haven't played Psychonauts 2, I really liked the original game. So unique and wacky and filled with some iconic memes.
I am the milkman. My milk is delicious.
Keeper is a bit more small scale, as it's a linear walking sim where all you do is move from point A to point B and solve puzzles to progress. Your goal is to reach the top of this mountain with the help of a bird. Despite the fact that there's no dialogue, you fully believe the dynamic on screen, and it's honestly kind of wholesome. The animations do a great job of conveying this. Aww. The game is very simple. Puzzles aren't really head scratchers, they're more just fun little activities to do while exploring these beautiful locations. This is honestly one of the main factors why it's on my list. The presentation is off the charts. You get to see some breathtaking vistas along your travels. Every area has a unique theme or quirk about them, which makes the game feel varied. For example, sometimes you switch forms, which changes how you maneuver around the world. I was personally a huge fan of the part when you get to become a Beyblade and go at insane speeds throughout the environment. The game packs a lot into its short runtime. It should only take about maybe 4 hours to beat this, which I think is perfect for this type of game. It doesn't overstay its welcome and it leaves you satisfied. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what comes next from Double Fine, as I know for a fact it will certainly be eye-catching. South of Midnight is yet another game that is on this list due to its unique presentation. I honestly think that Xbox needs to do a better job at advertising their games, because besides seeing this at like one Xbox presentation, I don't remember seeing much marketing. Same with Keeper, honestly. Correct me if I'm wrong here. This game deserves a lot more attention. South of Midnight follows Hazel Flood as she tries to rescue her mother from mystical eldritch horrors. The game is set in the Deep South and they utilize the setting very well. I'm not from there, of course, but you get a great sense of the life and culture. I really want to see more of the world than what we were actually shown, because we get to meet a great variety of interesting characters and see some very beautiful and awesome locations. Hazel herself is a great protagonist. She's very charismatic and likable, and she even made me laugh a few times.
My salvation.
A talking fish? Nope. Ain't no way.
I do like how each character brings a new dynamic to the table when talking to her. They help explore different sides of her in an organic way. For example, in the span of 5 minutes, you completely understand her relationship with her mother before she goes missing, and it's really impressive considering that this would be the main driving force for the narrative. I honestly wish though that we got a bit more development with Hazel, as some of her plot points weren't fully fleshed out. The rest of the cast were solid, with some standouts being the catfish, who serves as a companion and the narrator for the story, and Rue, one of the game's antagonists, who is voiced by Jar Jar Binks, by the way. I only found that out after I'd beaten the game and saw his name in the credits. And he's also the voice director, like what the fuck? Is Jar Jar Binks a game developer now? If I didn't see his name in those credits, I would not have known it was him. It was completely different from his other work. He did a fantastic job. The story itself is a bit simple, but it serves as a good vessel to allow us to experience the world of South of Midnight. Despite the fact that most of the game is set in forests, swamps, or just general wilderness, it never feels stale. Gameplay is a bit of a mixed bag, however. Traversing the environments is fine. I like the simple platforming and climbing we have. I especially like the sequences where you have to run away from Rue, as the platforming is at its most fun here. The music is also fantastic, but we'll get back to that in a bit. Climbing was a bit clunky, however, which resulted in me making some stupid mistakes like this. No, it is not a skill issue. It's really the combat that could have been fleshed out the most. Instead of taking on raging zombified hillbillies in the bayou, you take on Haints, which are these mystical creatures that come in a few varieties like foot soldiers, ranged, healer, tank, etc. The enemy variety is fine. I just think the combat itself can get a little repetitive. You do get abilities, which are fun. I especially loved the pull attack, especially when you get to slingshot yourself onto a larger enemy. A very satisfying experience. I just don't like how segmented it all feels. You always know when a combat encounter is going to start, as it's always in these distinct arenas, and it's always the same objective. Take out all the enemies and then interact with an object to heal the area from the stigma. It just gets old after a while. Frequently throughout the game, you help characters with their grief, and the structure is pretty much always the same. To sum it up, the gameplay here is basically exploration section, followed by a bit of combat, which then reveals a bit of backstory of the character you're healing. Do this like 4 times and then the chapter is complete. It doesn't happen in every chapter, and maybe not the exact same way, but it's frequent enough. I don't hate this, as I actually really do like the story they're showing, but the gameplay itself doesn't justify the game's length. It almost feels like padding. I think they could have removed a combat encounter or 2 from each chapter if they didn't have the time to make it more complicated and engaging. The saving grace of the combat is the boss fights. Holy shit, the boss fights are very good. Sure, most of them are simple in design, but they are fun to fight. Every boss has a crazy unique look to them, and they all have their own great boss themes. That reminds me, the music is fantastic. So many great tunes that perfectly fit the vibe and or boss you are fighting. Come on, man, this is amazing. These sections are by far the best part of the game and are the main reason why the game made the top 10. My only other major complaint is that the story could have been wrapped up better. It kind of just ends abruptly, which is a shame. Maybe we will get more in a potential sequel. If the combat and gameplay structure was more developed and less predictable, then this game could have easily made the top 5. It makes me not want to replay the game, as there isn't much replay value besides leveling up all your abilities and finding all the hidden lore collectibles. Overall, it's a shame this game isn't higher on my list, because the presentation, characters, music, and boss fights are 10 out of 10, but the flaws drag it down to around an 8. I would still wholeheartedly recommend a playthrough though if you get the chance. Keep Driving is a game about driving.
No shit.
No, I am not kidding. But it's a game that takes this simple premise and turns it into a surprisingly deep experience. The game is set in the early 2000s and follows your character going on a road trip to reach a faraway music festival. Immediately what grabbed me was the premise and the pixel art aesthetic. I love games that look like this, and I usually love an experience that puts a large emphasis on the journey. Road trip type games are one of my favorite subgenres, and since this game is just one big road trip, it felt like it was made just for me. I honestly thought that it'd just be a simpler linear experience where you just go from A to B and interact with some characters, do some basic gameplay, and vibe with the music, but the gameplay is way more complicated than at first glance. Your goal is to reach the music festival, but you have so many options at your disposal. You can choose which area to drive to, manage your car by upgrading it, do quests, etc, etc, etc. You can also pick up hitchhikers, which come with their own skills. Yes, there are skills in this game. Your character and the hitchhikers you collect can do certain actions that help you maintain your car better during events. Events are these sections where something happens that requires you to have certain skills to overcome them. Skills fulfill certain criteria. For example, a skill could be good for car or fuel related problems. If you succeed, then happy days, but if not, then your car can take damage. You have to make sure your car stays up and running, otherwise you risk it breaking down and running out of fuel, and you might have to start over unless you bought gear to fix it or you have the money to call a tow truck. I loved how you were given so much freedom to do whatever you want. Sometimes I would buy a bunch of coffee so that my character could keep driving for ages without sleep, or I'd fit my car with a roll cage for racing. You were encouraged to do what you want, as you get a lot of interesting locations and quest lines if you do so. The game has multiple endings. You don't even need to reach the festival if you don't want to. I barely scratched the surface of this game, as I only got 2 of the endings and maybe interacted with a handful of characters on offer. It's surprisingly packed with loads of stuff to do. The biggest highlight of the game for me, however, was the music. The indie rock soundtrack perfectly fits the time period and makes me feel nostalgic despite the fact that I was a baby at the time. You can customize your playlist by selecting what specific songs play and what order they play in, which is a nice touch. You'll like more as you progress, which leads to some great moments where you can just vibe on the open road. Sometimes I would just sit there and do nothing and just take in the atmosphere. The music is that good. Highly recommend you do the same. There aren't many games like this that expertly capture the nostalgia of the early 2000s. If you want an experience that's relaxing, atmospheric, and has a surprisingly deep gameplay loop, then I can't think of a better game to be absorbed in than Keep Driving. Oh boy, this game slaps. Doom has been riding a high since 2016 and it doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. Rip and tear and rip while being dripped out as fuck with a badass shield. For this entry, Doom the Dark Ages decides to change things up by making combat orientate itself around parrying and defensive play, while also putting more emphasis on the story. Does it stick the landing? For the most part, yes, but I do have some issues. First, let me state that the presentation is amazing. This is the best looking Doom game to date. I love the medieval sci-fi aesthetic that permeates throughout the game. It gives itself a very unique identity. I mean, come on. Seeing knights wield shotguns, chain guns, and plasma rifles is very cool. Performance-wise, it ran very smoothly despite some occasional FPS drops that were mainly caused from recording on OBS. Music has always been an important staple of every Doom game, and I'm happy to say that it still delivers high-quality, pulse-pounding tracks, but I do think it's a slight downgrade to Doom 2016 and Eternal. Mick Gordon was not brought back after his falling out with Bethesda and id Software, so they got finishing Move Inc. instead. And to their credit, they do capture a similar style and tone to the previous soundtracks, but also still feeling like their own. I just feel like there isn't as many iconic tracks as before. Some of the tracks do blend into the background for me instead of being at the forefront. I guess the best way to describe it is that in 2016 and Eternal, the soundtrack worked in tandem with the gunplay to enhance every encounter. For example, BFG Division. While in Doom the Dark Ages, most of the tracks feel like just standard backing tracks. It's still top quality, don't get me wrong. It's just that Mick Gordon knocked out the park with those two Doom games, and I don't know if we're ever going to get another Doom game that surpasses them. Now I think it's finally time to talk about combat. In previous Doom games, your style of play would usually be fast and aggressive, quickly evading enemy attacks and dealing as much damage as possible in quick succession. The game would reward you for this with stuff like glory kills, which give you health, and using the chainsaw, which would give you ammo. Dark Ages decided to put more emphasis on playing defense and parrying. I never thought I'd see parrying in a Doom game, but here we are. This whole style would probably be make or break for a lot of people. I was very skeptical when I first heard about this, and it does take some getting used to, but after a while, I started getting into it, and I found it very satisfying and enjoyable. It can still be aggressive, but it's more about waiting for the right moment instead of just dodging and holding down the trigger. Everything revolves around the shield, as most enemies will melt your health if you don't use it properly. The shield can be thrown to destroy armor and shields. It can outright kill certain enemies. I do like the strategy involved with having to whittle down an enemy's defenses and then striking at the right moment. It does get a bit tiring by the end, however, as enemies begin to almost feel bullet spongy. I do like this mechanic, although the game probably relies on it too much for its own good, instead of allowing the weapon roster to shine. The weapons themselves are good. We get a nice variety of wacky weapons that all have a place in the sandbox, although some of them definitely felt better than others. Also, I have this issue where I always prioritize using the super shotgun every chance I get. It's really satisfying to use, and it's just really cool. Honestly, once the second half of the game started, I was mostly only using the other weapons for challenges or leveling them up to full because my completionist brain told me to do so. Okay, I wasn't that bad, but I did use the super shotgun way more than I probably should have. Other standout weapons were the pulverizer, which if you look at it, you can see why it was used a lot in the marketing. Very good for crowd control, and it's just satisfying crushing skulls through this death machine. Another personal favourite was the chainsaw. It's certainly one of the most unique guns we've gotten in the series. Oh boy, the euphoria I get when I strike a distant enemy with it, and it deals massive damage, which leads to me decimating the enemy with a melee kill. Melee kills are still a thing in this game, but there's less emphasis on glory kills, which is a shame. I loved how in previous games, the Doomslayer had a unique takedown for every enemy. It added to the carnage and made you feel invincible. Instead we get generic punching and kick animations with the occasional cool takedown. It is cool that we get a few different melee weapons, which can all be leveled up to give you different abilities, but it doesn't have the same punch as before, despite having great sound effects when in use. I actually really like the shield runes. These runes are activated when parrying and can give you really cool results, like auto turrets and a swarm of daggers. They are nice additions to the sandbox and help give you an edge against aggressive opponents. Although we will primarily be shooting enemies on the ground, we occasionally get access to a giant mech and a freaking dragon. These serve as a nice change of pace and add some much needed variety. I do think the mech levels are a bit too simplistic and linear for their own good, but there was only a few of them in the whole game, so it wasn't too bad. However, I can see these sections being annoying on repeat playthroughs since there's nothing you can do differently to spice them up. The dragon levels I'm a big fan of, as we usually get these huge maps to fly around in. I loved flying around and fighting secret areas and getting into mini chases and dogfights. Also, it's just really badass, like come on, look at it. The game does a great job at giving the Doomslayer moments to aura farm. When it comes to level design, it's mostly good. Some levels are peak Doom, while others feel a bit more bog standard. I also didn't love the last few levels, as by that point the combat was getting a bit stale for me, and the environment itself didn't change up the gameplay enough to keep me engaged. This is a shame too, as I do love the look of these areas. I think a level or two should have been cut, or at least shortened down, as I do think the game goes on a bit too long. The story is also just kind of there. Look, I don't play Doom for story. I play it for the pulse-pounding action and carnage. It's cool seeing the Doomslayer's backstory and seeing these locations that were only referenced in passing in previous games, but I don't really care for the story or characters. Also, I hated how sometimes the game would have cutscenes of the Doomslayer getting taken out for the sake of the narrative, when I know damn well I would have whooped their ass in gameplay. I prefer when a Doom game's narrative is just there to supplement cool gameplay scenarios. I do enjoy Doom's lore, but in previous games it was usually an optional thing you could explore yourself. It wouldn't take priority over the gameplay. Overall, Doom the Dark Ages tries a lot of new things, and I do think it mostly hits its mark. The gameplay and level designs could have been tweaked a bit better, and I didn't care much for the narrative, but I gotta respect the devs for trying something new instead of just doing more of the same. If you prefer the style of Doom 2016 and Eternal over this, then I totally understand, because I felt the same way. But I also really enjoyed this, so I recommend you also give this a shot if you had previous reservations. It's my least favourite of this new trilogy, but it's still very fun, and it kicks a lot of ass. Wuchang Fallen Feathers is on my list because there's a hot Asian lady on the cover. I'm joking, I swear, I'm not that shallow or down bad. I played this game after a friend recommended it to me, and I've been a pretty big Soulsborne fan for the last couple of years, so I had to give this a try. I honestly wasn't expecting anything amazing, as the Soulsborne genre is oversaturated with functional but mostly generic copycats. There is the exception, of course. Liza P got a lot of praise when it released, and I think Wuchang Fallen Feathers deserves the same. This game doesn't reinvent the wheel when it comes to this genre, but you know how the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Wuchang Fallen Feathers takes the Souls formula and executes it very well while sprinkling in its own flourishes to give itself its own identity. It feels like a hybrid of Dark Souls' deep customization and exploration with Sekira's fast-paced combat, although it's definitely not as fast-paced, don't worry. I really liked the world of Wuchang Fallen Feathers. It's set in China during the Ming Dynasty, and the game utilizes this setting very well. There's a lot of beautiful and also disgusting places to explore. While I'm not that knowledgeable on this part of history, the game does a good job of catching you up. The story follows Wuchang, a woman who lost her memory when she arrived at the first major area of the game, Worship's Rise. The area has been afflicted by something called the Feathering, which is causing all the carnage and monsters you see on screen. You must set out to stop this and to rediscover your identity and original quest. The story is pretty good, although I was lost at times, as the game copies from Software's style of storytelling, where most of the story is told through optional dialogue and lore. You're never forced to engage with the story, which is great if you only want to focus on gameplay, but also bad as you might not be sure what to do next, and as such, lose track of what's going on in the world around you. What really engaged me, however, was the combat. I'm a sucker for this style of combat, and I love the variety you have on offer. You have long swords, dual blades, axes, spears, and you even get a large selection of items and spells to bolster your style of combat. The game invites you to play this multiple times, as I realistically could only really invest in one style of play, which for me was the longsword. It's a simple weapon, but I loved how it felt when in use, and it was extremely satisfying stabbing enemies in the back with it. You can change your style if you want with the correct item. You aren't forced into any specific style of play, which is appreciated. I was happy with my choices, so I stuck with it for the whole playthrough. I also engaged with a lot of spells, which usually isn't the case for me. I'm the type of guy that keeps things simple in Souls type games, and just go with a standard sword and shield with very little magic or other external factors. I use them quite frequently, as a lot of them are very useful against certain enemies or bosses. Now, I wasn't heavily relying on them, unless it was for certain boss fights, but I did use them on a healthy basis. Some of them were really cool and unique too, which add a lot of fun and variety to combat encounters. The bosses range from absolute bullshit to great, which I guess is par for the course with From Software type games. I do think most of them are very fun to fight. They look really cool and usually have great music accompanying them. It's just that some bosses have movesets that favour certain styles of play over others. For example, the parrying mechanic was a must for specific fights, and that ability is optional. I lucked out because I thankfully already had the parry mechanic locked pretty early on in my playthrough. I think these fights shouldn't have been so reliant on specific factors. You can reset your stats to change this, but not everyone wants to do that if they favour their own specific playstyle. It's not a deal breaker, just something to keep in mind. One thing I do really appreciate about the game is how it tracks characters for you. If a character is near a shrine with a quest, the game will tell you by showing their character icon beside the location in the menu. I get the appeal of having to find the characters yourself in Dark Souls or Elden Ring, but sometimes I like having more streamlined experiences that doesn't require me to look up a guide. The game still falls into that trap, however, of being able to easily lock yourself out of certain quests by going to an area too early or by accidentally missing one conversation with a character. It's very frustrating, as you could have been following their questline for ages, but whoops, I guess you have to restart the whole game to find out what happened. One time I was like 90% done with one questline, but then I went to an area too early and oopsie daisy, I guess I missed out. Safe to say I was a tiny bit pissed off. I mentioned it briefly earlier, but the music was great. I loved the atmospheric tracks we got while exploring, or vibing in this game's equivalent of Firelink Shrine, but the more epic and bombastic tracks that accompanied bosses were also top tier. Fair play to the composer for their work, as some of these tracks rival music you would hear in From Software's catalogue. Lastly, the game looks very good, although the environments can sometimes look very Unreal Engine 5, which isn't a good thing by the way. For the most part though, it's a beauty to look at, and we get some nice variety of locations to explore. My personal favourite was Mountains End Wu, followed by Cloudspire, although most locations were great. Wuchang Fallen Feathers might not do anything groundbreaking, but it takes an oversaturated genre and manages to make something new and fresh with it. Side note, but do yourself a favour and look up the endings guide when you're in chapter 4, so that you can save yourself the frustration of getting the bad ending. It's very easy to obtain, and will result in you having to replay the whole game just to change it. Fun. Eat, sleep, loot, repeat was my lifestyle for around a month with Arc Raiders. This game had a chokehold on me. I was addicted. For the 5 people who don't know, Arc Raiders is an extraction shooter set in a sci-fi dystopian future where the last of humanity is trying to survive against machines known as Arc. You play as a raider, and your main objective is to go to the surface and scavenge for supplies, complete quests, fight the Arc or your fellow man. After you are finished, or unfortunately stabbed at the back, you extract back to your base in Speranza, which is the main human settlement. The reason why Arc Raiders is in my top 5 is because of how addicting and intense the gameplay loop is. If you get downed while on the surface, you lose everything that's on your person. This makes every game feel intense and engaging, because you don't know if you're going to extract with the best haul of your life, or lose it all to the extremely powerful and vicious Arc enemies, or in some cases be betrayed by your fellow raider. Dirty rats. Getting killed by a rat is one of the most infuriating experiences in gaming, and I hope that both sides of your pillow are warm when you're sleeping at night. Anytime I've killed a rat, I felt like I've done the entire Arc Raiders community a civil service. One of the best feelings in gaming ever. I'm doing my part. The main thing you'll be doing, however, is looting. You mostly get crafting supplies to upgrade equipment back at your base, for example workbenches which can be used to craft weapons, healing items or other key items. You also get blueprints which allow you to learn how to craft specific items like weapons, grenades or attachments. There's a wide variety of cool guns to choose from that all have their own uses. Well, some are a bit shit, but they can't all be winners. I also like having to manage what augments and shields I would use per game, as different ones give you certain bonuses that might be more appropriate for certain situations. The whole gameplay loop revolves around getting the best gear and then going back in to get even more of it. No 2 encounters are the same, as sometimes you go into a lobby and meet the nicest players ever, and you help each other out and it's all wholesome and such, or you get a lobby with the most sweaty tryhards who will shoot you on sight. I'm honestly more scared of other players than Arc. Arc are at least predictable, humans are not. That unpredictable nature is what kept on bringing me back. I didn't know what I was going to get, or if I would encounter any friendly or hostile players. Having no safety net makes you take risks, and as such, it's exhilarating when things go your way. At the time of writing, there's 5 maps on offer, and they're all good for different reasons. Damn Battlegrounds is a solid starter map with room for close quarters and long distance fights. Buried City is for those who like urban close quarters warfare, as most of the map consists of bunched up buildings. Spaceport fulfills a similar design philosophy to Damn Battlegrounds, with the exception of having a very striking central area that many will gravitate towards for great gear and even greater carnage. Blue Gate is sniper heaven. Most of the map is open areas which invites a lot of long distance play. Stella Montis is, well, it's Stella Montis, an indoor close quarters hellhole filled with the most dangerous Arc and scummiest players. It is kill or be killed, and you will most likely fall into the latter. Just bring a free loadout, as you will more than likely lose your stuff while playing on this map. I love the distinctive vibes of each map. It gives the gameplay loop a nice variety and leads to a lot of cool action moments that can only be experienced on these specific maps. Besides the standard looting and shooting gameplay, there are other things to do like challenges which give you rewards like cosmetic items. I don't like the fact that there's microtransactions, as this is a paid game, but at least you can get the currency for free to unlock the cool outfits. I do hope they add more cool free outfits though, as most of the free ones are only just okay to me, and all the cool premium stuff is stuck behind a paywall. Another area of the game I'm mixed on is the missions. While a lot of them give out good rewards, the objectives themselves can be very boring or poorly designed. You get the occasional fun one, but it's mostly just run to point A, interact with something, then run to point B and repeat. I hope that future updates include better designed quests. Speaking of updates, I do hope that the future content we get gives players who already have everything unlocked more things to do. Once you've upgraded everything, your only goal really is to do challenges for cosmetics or find blueprints or rare guns, but that isn't very common. You can have sessions where you get nothing good for hours, and it can get very frustrating. They are trying to continuously add new content, so hopefully we'll get something very good that incentivizes players to keep playing. My other major issue is the use of AI. Not the AI that's used for the ARC enemies. That's very well implemented, and it's very ethical. I'm talking about the god-awful text-to-speech voice acting.
He can definitely take care of himself. The two of us go way back, in fact. Maybe I'll tell you about it someday.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man? Get your ass on, boy.
You serious?
So from what I could gather, the devs recorded lines from real actors with their consent and put it through an AI to give us these terrible line deliveries. Sometimes it's fine, but a lot of times it feels lifeless. I know the actors gave their consent, but this could open up very dangerous business practices going forward. It's a slippery slope into games being fully AI voice acted. I can sort of ignore it because the characters aren't a major part of the experience. It's the gameplay and world that engages me. How ironic though that a game about the last of humanity fighting against machines has humans being voiced by machines. If you have a moral objection to playing this game because of its AI use, I completely understand. This is one reason why it's not higher on my list. I still had a great time regardless, and I hope that the devs can deliver more engaging content going forward without having to resort to using unethical business practices. Fair warning, if you do decide to play this game, it will take over your life. I honestly didn't know what to expect from Skate Story, except that I thought it looked like if you played Tony Hawk's Pro Skater while taking way too much LSD. Skate Story is a visually striking, semi-linear skateboarding game following a skater who makes a deal with the devil to allow himself to be freed if he skates to the moon and swallows it. Yes, that is the plot. Don't question it. This is my favorite game of the year in terms of visuals. Like, holy shit, it's a visual masterpiece. Every section was filled with beautiful colour and shapes. It really was a pleasure to skate around these environments. The gameplay consists of you skating around linear or semi-open areas to complete objectives, most of which require you to perform tricks to complete. The tricks themselves are a bit simple, but for a game like this, I think it works, as having too many different combos and variations of tricks might have frustrated players. This isn't a traditional skateboarding game like Skate or Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. The game does a lot with its simple premise and gameplay. Every area is visually distinct and it has its own gimmick, which is always fun. I also loved the writing. We get some really hilarious moments with these eccentric characters, and the mad thing is that it's not even voice acted. The writing is just that good and funny. The game incorporates boss fights with the skating, and somehow it works very well. They aren't too difficult to beat, although you might have to restart one or two sections, but it doesn't take too long to make up for lost time. I don't think the devs were trying to make it too hard anyway. I believe they just wanted us to be immersed and get lost in this beautiful world that also includes one of the best soundtracks of the year. I know I was already harping on about music earlier, but my god, this takes the cake. Top tier stuff. If you're open to very outside the box type games with striking visuals and breathtaking music, then Skate Story is the game for you. Blonde Blazer is the better romance. Come on, let's start a shipping war. I can take it. All jokes aside, Dispatch really surprised me, and it took the gaming industry by storm. We haven't had a choice-based game in the style of Telltale get this much attention since Telltale. Former members of the Telltale team helped create this game. They were working on The Wolf Among Us 2, and since that game was going through development hell, they jumped ship and created their own studio. That was years ago, and now they've released Dispatch, while The Wolf Among Us 2 is still not out yet. I'm starting to think that game might never come out. Anyways, Dispatch is a choice-based game that follows former superhero Robert Robertson III as he tries to mentor a group of former supervillains at his place of work, the Superhero Dispatch Network, or SDN for short. While there, he reunites with old friends, potentially falls in love, and has to deal with the fallout of his past actions with supervillains. What gripped me the most in this game was Blonde Blazer. I mean, the strong writing and the game's unique take on the superhero genre. Yeah, of course. It kind of feels like if Invincible blended itself with The Office. You can have these really fun and witty conversations between characters, while also including some hard-hitting and serious scenes. Sometimes the comedy can overtake a serious moment, but thankfully it doesn't happen too often, or at the very least, the joke is pretty funny. Robert is a great protagonist. It's some of Aaron Paul's best work outside of Breaking Bad. For a guy that has one of the most distinct voices in Hollywood, I rarely ever thought of Jesse Pinkman. I only ever saw Robert Robertson III, which is a testament to the writing and Paul's performance. The rest of the cast are very solid. I don't think there's one weak link in the cast. The Z-Team were all fun and charming and annoying in their own special way. I think my personal favourite Z-Team member was Golem. Dude was just super chill and wholesome. The guy can literally adopt a baby kaiju if you want. My second favourite might be Flambe, mainly due to how hilarious he is. Like, come on, the I'm a bitch, my name is Robert song is top tier comedy. Robert bounces off each cast member very well. He gets at least one memorable scene with each character, which is crazy with such a huge ensemble cast. As you've probably guessed already, I'm a blonde Blazer fan. I really liked her character, and it's not just because she's a hot muscle mommy. She's very funny and captivating in her own right, very supportive to Robert and the rest of the cast, and I love the little subtleties you explore with her character if you decide to romance her. No hate towards Invisigal, by the way. I think her romance is good, I just prefer if you stay friends and just mentor her. I think she needs a mentor and friend first before I love her. I also think some of her behaviour is kind of problematic, and that's saying something since she's paired with other Z-Team members, you know, the former supervillains. If you like her romance, fair enough, but it's just not for me. Besides the story, the gameplay ranges from non-existent to pretty engaging. The non-existent parts are in reference to these QTEs. They are so pointless. I don't think you can actually fail any of these. It's just done purely for stats. There's also hacking minigames, which are fine but nothing special. They can also get a little grating on repeat playthroughs as the solution is always the same. The really good gameplay comes in the form of the dispatch minigame. In these sections you have to direct your team to distress calls around the city. Every call is unique and you have to figure out which hero is best suited for the job, as every hero has different attributes that suit different playstyles. For example, some characters are smart or agile or have strong builds. After a call is finished, the game gives you a roll of the dice to see if you succeeded, and sometimes you do, and other times it's fucking bullshit. I loved having to guess who would be best suited for each job. It can get pretty hectic, and sometimes you'd be left in a position where you have no one good for the job, and you just have to wing it and hope for the best. They add different things in every chapter to spruce things up, so it doesn't get boring. My only complaint is that we didn't get an endless mode, where the waves get harder and harder and you're trying to stay alive as long as you can to gain a high score. Ad hoc, please add this in. Seems like this game is a slam dunk, right? Well, it ain't perfect. I do think some of the cast, mostly the Z-Team, are underdeveloped due to a lack of screen time. Most episodes only last an hour, which isn't enough time to develop everyone. I can't be too mad though, as I know the devs had a pretty rocky production history with this game, so I wouldn't be too surprised if the shorter runtimes were done to save development time. It's a shame then that so much of the runtime goes to Invisigal. Look, I'm not an Invisigal hater, and I know that she's important to the narrative. I just think that the game focuses way too much on her compared to other characters. Wish we got more scenes with Chase, the other Z-Teamers, the villains, and of course, Blazer. I actually find the whole shipping war thing stupid because it's not even a fair debate. Invisigal gets far more attention than Blazer, so it's not a fair comparison. The game also on numerous occasions makes you feel bad for not romancing her. They have so many scenes of trying to push Robert and Invisigal together, and I just do not care. They really want you to do this romance. She really is the Liara of Dispatch. If you know, you know. This game could have been my number one if they rewrote the episodes a bit to give other characters more screen time. The gameplay that isn't dispatching could have been better too, because it feels like you're just watching a show where you have to occasionally press a button. I'm not trying to come off as harsh, as I am aware of the trouble production this game had. I just want to highlight these criticisms so that the developers can take this into account for Season 2 and make that game even better. The game probably deserves an 8 out of 10 and to be lower on my list, but because of how wholesome it is and how strong and captivating it can be, it gets a 9 out of 10 and lands in my top 3. I'd say a lot of you thought Claire Obscure Expedition 33 would be my number 1, but no, I'm a contrarian. I'm kidding, of course. I do believe that Expedition 33 deserves most of the hype. I did make a video recently discussing the issues I had with it, so check that out after this if you want my more in-depth thoughts. What else can I say about this game that hasn't already been said by millions of other people? I also think the game looks amazing. The soundtrack is as close to perfection as you can get. The combat has a lot of depth and variety. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. Parrying feels so good.
Nice.
I love how we get so many pictos to choose from, so we can make some insane builds for bosses. The enemy variety is solid, with almost every enemy looking and fighting in a unique way. Almost everything comes together so well, and it really does feel like a love letter to video games and art in general. Now, why isn't it number 1? Well, you should totally watch my video explaining why. Shameless plug. I won't highlight everything from that video here, but some of my main points were that Act 3 doesn't do the best job at scaling your character's power levels, which makes most fights a breeze, and I also think that the story falters at the end. I still think the story is very, very, very good, by the way. I strongly believe that Mael, Verso, Gustav, Lune, CL, Monoko, and my boy SK are some of the most compelling characters I've ever experienced in some time. I just think they could have stuck the landing better. I still highly recommend playing it and forming your own thoughts, because it's still in the upper echelon of games, even with a slightly botched ending. We need more games like this, and not Call of Duty Slop Ops 7 for fuck's sake.
I'm very much looking forward to what the developers make next, because I wouldn't be surprised if we get another game on this level of quality. Here's to the future, tomorrow comes. And the number 1 game of 2025 goes to...
Clair-obscur, Expédition 33!
No, Expedition 33, you're not my game of the year. You had your moment, now it's someone else's turn. The Altars really took me by surprise. I had a feeling I would like it, but I had no idea I would consider it my game of the year. The Altars is a sci-fi based management survival game that follows Jan Dulski, a builder for a corporation called Ally Corp, who ends up being the sole survivor of a ship crash on a hostile, desolate planet. Jan finds a base that was deployed by the corporation in case of emergency and uses it as shelter. He quickly realizes, however, that he can't run the whole thing by himself and is forced to clone himself in order to survive. The premise of this game is what hooked me. Having the protagonist make clones of himself is a very interesting concept, and the game explores this idea to the fullest. You could have easily made this a generic clone story where the clones do everything you say or classically rebel and become a villain, but the game does something way more interesting and makes them all unique characters for you to interact with. Every clone or alter of Jan is a possible version of him from another timeline. They all have their own memories and experiences. For example, one version of him is a doctor or a scientist. Every alter is extremely compelling to follow throughout the game. My only regret is not being able to experience them all, as there was a limit on how many you could clone. Alex Jordan voices every single version of Jan, and it's honestly criminal that he didn't get nominated for Best Performance at the Game Awards. My guy had to voice like 8 different versions of the same guy and make sure they were all distinct and memorable, and he does it perfectly. That's no small feat. Jan himself is a very compelling protagonist. We get to see so many sides of him as we get full access to his life story. Same with the other alters. You get to see his little personality quirks, his defense mechanisms, and despite the fact that everyone is a clone of him, they don't always get along or see eye to eye with him. They fight and clash a lot, and it's up to you to make everyone get along for the sake of everyone's survival. The themes of identity and the uncertainty of the future really resonate with me, as I too sometimes question whether or not I make the right decisions. What does the world have in store for me? Am I living up to my full potential? Jan deals with this throughout the whole game, and being able to relate to him made me love the game even more. Getting to experience Jan coming to terms with his past and seeing him try to better himself for the future was a simple yet satisfying character arc. In the words of Rocky Balboa, "Everybody should change!" Besides the compelling narrative, the game has a very fun and in-depth gameplay loop. The whole game revolves around managing your base. In every chapter, your base is being blocked by a huge obstacle, which requires you to explore your surroundings to discover a solution to your problem. In the meantime, you have to keep your base up and running, which requires you to set up mining outposts so you can send resources back to base. You also need to ensure the crew is properly fed, which means you have to grow and serve food. The base also needs to be constantly repaired. There is a lot to do and manage, and this is where your alters come into play. You assign alters to do specific tasks, and they will fulfill their duties to the best of their ability. Some alters are better at specific tasks than others, so you have to prioritize one area over another if you want the best output from an alter. You also need to attend to each alter's needs, as if you don't, there's a chance they might try and mutiny against you. You can prevent this by doing character quests for them, or by making their living and working conditions better. Gathering enough resources allows you to upgrade your base and get new modules. These upgrades also make resource gathering easier, like the auto mining outpost for example. It's very cool seeing your base gradually get bigger as the game goes on, seeing the fruits of your labour and all that. I love being able to explore each new part of the base I built. My personal favourite module was the social room. You get to listen to music and even play ping pong, or in this case, beer pong. The cherry on top is that you get to watch Chris and Jack skits on the TV. Very funny comedic duo, and it's the real reason why this game is number 1. I don't make the rules. If my game has Sokka from Avatar The Last Airbender in it, it's an immediate 10 out of 10. Another 10 out of 10 thing in this game is the What If song. If you know, you know. Overall, The Altars masterfully mixes its very fun and in-depth gameplay loop with a compelling story. Jan's relatable struggles were very captivating, and despite the game's long runtime, I was engaged, no, I was captivated from beginning to end. The Altars is my favourite game of 2025, and I wouldn't want it any other way.